But join us right now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, Andrew DiCecco. His appearance powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, contributor for InsideTheBirds.com, also Eagles writer for 97.3 ESPN.com. Joins us here on a Monday night on 97.3 ESPN. Andrew, how you doing today?
Josh, I'm doing well. There's a lot to unpack here from yesterday's game, and excited to dive in. Just wanted to say happy holidays to you and all your listeners as well.
Well, we appreciate that, considering this is the final game night of 2020. So congratulations, you're the final guest of game night in 2020, because I'll be filling in for Mike the rest of the year. So let's jump into this game yesterday. I thought it was huge, massive, that the Eagles had something go wrong early in the game, Andrew. And then Hurts led them back into the game. And I know there's a lot of different things that happened, but I think for 2 games now, I think it's blatantly obvious that Jalen Hurts has a level of poise and leadership and taking responsibility, as he did after the game, that is, in my mind, very refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, taking everything into account, Josh, I would even go as far as to say that that was the most compelling and gutsiest quarterback performance I've seen from an Eagles quarterback since Nick Foles in the Super Bowl. It was fun to watch, and, you kind of got to see him grow up essentially throughout the game. He was making plays that we hadn't seen quarterbacks in the Eagles uniform making quite some time. He rose to the occasion. He defied a lot of odds that were stacked against him. You talk about the 16-0 deficit that he was in, and he never flinched. He ran the offense and he made plays, and he took what the defense was giving him, and he never tried. He never got outside of himself as far as his capabilities and tried to do too much. And I think that his energy and positivity and his overall performance just tended to radiate throughout the entire team. And you got to see, they were undermanned tremendously, and they slugged it out with the playoff caliber team. And, it's encouraging to see moving forward.
Now, part of that was also encouraging is, despite the fact that Hurts had these rookie moments, right? There were a couple throws that were not really that great. The safety was a mess with the grounding call. But overall, the fact that this team now has scored more points in the more touchdowns too in the last 2 games than they did in the previous few combined, I think is a sign that they have found what was broken with this offense, and that was a different quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say when you look at just the overall fluidity of the offense and the ability to move the football up and down the field. Guys were getting open. That was a storyline throughout the season. A lot of the talk was that the receivers weren't getting open. We got to see countless examples of guys getting open. Jalen Reagor concerned me a little bit, slowing up on the top of his routes and kind of getting squeezed to the sideline a little bit. You want to see a little bit more polish from him. But I thought, Alshon Jeffrey stepped up. Dallas Goedert had a monster game. It was just a collective effort, and it all stemmed from the quarterback play and just the overall awareness, the pocket presence, the poise, and the leadership that Jalen Hurts brought to the Eagles offense. And it looked like an entirely different team. You have to wonder if they would be in a more ideal situation as far as a playoff outlook had they made the switch even 2 weeks earlier.
Now, you mentioned them switching 2 weeks earlier. Let's dive down the hole a little bit. I felt that the game they should have made the switch, definitely. If there was a game I could point to, was the Browns game. And the reason I point to that Browns game, Andrew, is because that game, the defense only allowed 13 points. The other 9 points, the offense was directly responsible for. And I have to wonder, with your hindsight being 2020, you have to wonder, Andrew, if Wentz was pulled and Hurts could have lit a spark in that game, maybe they win that game, and maybe they're still in control of their own destiny when it comes to the postseason.
Yeah, it's possible. Asking a rookie quarterback to come in halfway through the game and execute a game plan when he probably hadn't seen, I guess at that point he wouldn't have seen too many first-team reps. It would be a tall task to kind of bring them back. The Browns are a decent team. They they're going to be a playoff team for the first time in quite some time. So that would have been a tall task. I think he would have made it a more competitive game for sure. And I think that going into the following week, having that full week of reps with the first team, I definitely think that he would have gotten the offense back on track. And I obviously the money allocated to Carson Wentz was a big reason why it took so long to make that switch. They wanted to give Carson every opportunity to kind of right himself. And he's going to have to be rehabilitated over the offseason in a big way, because what Jalen Hurts has shown, if he continues on that trajectory like we expect him to, it's going to be very hard to move away from that, looking into the offseason.
Andrew DiCecco joins us here on the Boardwalk on the hotline on 97.3 ESPN. You can follow him on Twitter at DiCecco NFL. His appearance powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Also check out his work over at InsideTheBirds.com and 97.3 ESPN.com. Andrew, you mentioned about the rebuilding, the retooling, the rehabilitation, whatever we want to call it, of Carson Wentz. Yes, we know he needs to be fixed on some level. But can he be fixed in Philadelphia? Is his career destined to be like, guys like Jim Plunkett and Kurt Warner and Randall Cunningham and others, where they had to go somewhere else to revive their careers?
I think that's going to have to be what kind of transpires here, because Josh, there's just so much stuff that it's kind of hard to overcome. It's kind of hard to come back from if you're Carson Wentz. You've kind of gotten Wally pipped multiple times. There's a statue of Nick Foles outside, in front of the link. There's every time he has a bad game, there's always chatter for a backup quarterback. There's always, is this guy for real? And you have Jalen Hurts they took in the second round. That's hard to overcome. And it's tough to play in Philadelphia. You're always going to be scrutinized as the quarterback. And when you have a rough season like that, he really isn't accustomed to having a season like that. You have to answer a lot of tough questions from the media, and you're written about and, kind of in a different light than you're used to. And a lot of that can wear on someone. And when now you're saying your backup quarterback, a rookie, a 22-year-old kid who came in and is executing the offense, the same offense that you struggled with, it's a tough pill to swallow. And then you got the whole Josina Anderson stuff over the years, and now that little news bit from Adam Schefter came out yesterday. There's just a lot of things surrounding Carson Wentz right now that for me, it would be hard to go into the offseason and then go into training camp, with all that having transpired. So I think that he can be rehabilitated. I do think that there's talent there. I have a hard time believing that someone can fall off a cliff so abruptly like he has. I just think that maybe a change of scenery is what he needs.
Now, forgive me for the moment of psychoanalysis, but I threw this idea out to Emery Hunt last week, and I know you and Emery are both guys who watch a lot of tape, a lot of college football at multiple levels. Mm-hmm. So I feel like if I'm going to ask anybody these kind of questions about Carson Wentz, I want to ask you guys. So here we go. I look at Wentz, and I think part of the problem with him is his background. I think you have a young man who was not recruited highly coming out of college. We know he had a growth spurt later in life. He was not the polished athlete coming out of high school that he came out of college as. He went to a program where he basically had to not crash the car, right? He didn't have to, per se, win every game. He was in a great organization, a great program. He came from a very limited background, North Dakota State. He wasn't exposed to as much life as other people are growing up environments. Now he comes to Philadelphia, something completely different he's ever experienced. He has to acclimate to the life of the NFL, the life of different cultures and people, things he's never experienced before, responsibilities and pressures on him he's never lived before. And I have to wonder, when you come from the environment that he came from into something as pressurized as the bubble that is Philadelphia sports, I have to wonder, is there maybe a part of him that maybe was never prepared to succeed in this situation?
Well, I appreciate the psychoanalysis aspect of looking at everything from every angle. But I think that's fair. But that being said, when you're the second overall pick, you're the quarterback of a football team. He's a national champion. He accomplished a lot at North Dakota State. He went through the pre-draft process. He was grilled with questions, pretty much under that light where you're getting asked a million questions by all these different evaluators and coaches and personnel folks, then, he has this immediate success with the Eagles. Essentially, 2016, he was okay, but then 2017, he was playing some of the best football of any quarterbacks ever played in the city. And you had that almost instant success. And then to kind of fall from grace, you then miss the injuries that pile up. And then this year, just nothing seems to be working for him. And he looks like a shell of his former self. He's missing guys. He's dropping his eyes. He's not seeing the field well. He's locking on to guys. It just seems like the wear and tear of the season, and he's just not used to that. He's used to winning. He's used to coming from a winning culture, and he's used to always being someone who was in full control. And now he's not, and he's being faced with all these different questions every week, and it almost seems like he's overwhelmed. You saw him in the press conferences, and he's not used to having things written about him like that. He's not used to having to play from behind and have to carry a team. And, these are things that he's going to have to be able to adjust to as a franchise quarterback. So while what you said there may be some weight to that, that's not going to, when you're getting paid to be an elite quarterback, a franchise quarterback, that's not going to cut it in any city. And that's certainly not going to cut it in Philadelphia. So if that is the case, Josh, he won't last very long here.
I'll take that as I'm not totally an idiot for coming up with the idea. I'll take that.
No, I think that not at all. I think that there's some sense to that, and I do think that when people talk about the mental aspect of him, as far as and as well as his physical ability, I think that plays a part of it. Based on his background, where he came from, what he's accustomed to, and then you take all the adversity that on top of that from his backup quarterbacks and the season itself. And I think that what you have there is just a broken quarterback.
Yeah, and I think the flip side, it's so different with Jalen Hurts because his dad was a coach. He went to Alabama. He got benched for a guy. He had to come in the SEC championship game and save Alabama's season. Then he's a grad transfer. And he goes to Oklahoma, and he gets them in the college football playoff. He goes into two of the highest pressure cookers in college football and has success despite all odds. So to me, I just feel like Jalen Hurts, maybe he's built for the Philadelphia situation a little bit better than Wentz is, because when I see this guy on the field, Hurts, nothing phases this guy, no matter what level I've seen him at.
He's a cool customer, and I think growing up in that football environment, that football culture, you said his dad was a coach, and he had to battle. Like, he was faced with adversity at a young age, and he overcame that. And he learned from different quarterbacks, from different situations. He knows what it takes to get back to the top. Whereas Carson Wentz has always been at the top. Now he's fell to the bottom, and he's struggling to kind of grasp that and dig himself out of that hole. Whereas Jalen Hurts knows what it takes to, overcome adverse situations. And if you hear his press conferences, he's just very mature for a 22-year-old. He talks about how he hates to lose more than he likes to win. And people were complimenting him on his 300-yard passing game. And he said, that's all good and well, but we lost the football game. He never lost sight of the main objective. And I think a lot of young players, that's lost on a lot of young players, and it's not on him. And he has the mindset, to me, of a 5-6 year veteran. And I think that has to do with everything from his background. So you have two quarterbacks, in my opinion, that have two very different, two different backgrounds and how they both got to their respective positions. So I do think there's something to be said for that.
Andrew DiCecco joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. You can follow him on Twitter at @DiCecco NFL. 97.3 ESPN.com Eagles writer, also contributor for InsideTheBirds.com. His appearance powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Andrews, hit a couple other things from the Eagles game yesterday. Let's first start on the offensive line. I want to know what your thoughts are. This was the 13th different iteration of the offensive line. I think the two things that stood out to me was they mentioned on the broadcast, number one, that Pryor and Herbig were missing some assignments. We saw that Mailata had trouble with the non-defensive line blitzers coming off the edge. And the other thing I noticed is that I can't see everything because, the way the cameras are set up, but it felt like to me that there were times that there were confusion on who should be blocking who on the offensive line yesterday.
Yeah, particularly on the right side. Nate Herbig and Matt Pryor in particular struggled. But, some of those were on Jalen Hurts as well, not being aware. And that's going to come with experience, holding on to the football a little bit too long, not being aware of what's around you. He did have 3 fumbles. I just think that when he grasps, the blocking scheme and the overall, he'll have that overall awareness of everything around him. And Matt Pryor is not your ideal right tackle. I'll tell you that right now. I mean, he's someone that you can kind of hide as a guard, but when you put him out there at tackle on an island, when he has to hold his own, he struggles mightily. And we saw that. And I thought the line, for what it was, Josh, honestly, I thought the line held up fairly well. But, obviously that's not good enough. That's not an NFL caliber offensive line. But I thought, given what they had to work with, I thought that they held up respectably. You're talking about a Cardinals line that really got after it the week before. Hassan Reddick had 5 sacks. All that taken into consideration, I thought that they did okay. But I think that's something that it's going to be a work in progress. It's the kid's second start, and it's going to be it'll be a little bit of a learning curve. He didn't have any sacks. He didn't take any sacks the first week. This week he took 6. So next week I think that he'll have based on what we've seen from him, that being able to grasp things quickly and be a quick processor. I think that will kind of work itself out soon.
Now let's flip over to the receivers, because you put out a tweet and it laid out the snap counts of these guys. I thought it was very interesting that Jeffrey had more snaps than Rager and Ward. In fact, Watkins and Fulgham, they both had almost the same number of snaps yesterday. And I thought that, watching the game in real time before I went back and watched it later, to me in real time, I was like, wow, Greg Ward's getting a lot of attention, a lot of action. He's having a great game. But when I went back and watched, I thought, wow, Alshon Jeffrey was on the field way more than I ever expected him to be in this game.
Yeah, man, let's talk snap counts. All right, so the way that I view it, the way that I saw it throughout the whole game, Josh, is you have a young quarterback like Jalen Hurts, but behind at the head of the receiving core, you have a veteran in Alshon Jeffrey, but you have a ton of young receivers. How do you help your young quarterback? By getting a veteran out there who's more of a possession receiver, who's going to go up and get the football. He knows how to he has that savviness to him. We saw him battling with Patrick Peterson. There's just a comfort level there as a rookie quarterback, knowing that you have a guy like Alshon that will go up and fight for the football and can be a red zone threat. And then with Rager, obviously Rager, he got nicked up there. Wasn't very pleased with his route running at all, but that's something that's going to come with time. Greg Ward has, routinely led the receiving corps in snaps, but he had 53% this week, and he's someone that has an instant rapport with Jalen Hurts, and you saw that in the Green Bay game when he threw that 32-yard dart to him in the back of the end zone. It was perfectly thrown. They were on the same page. They had that continuity, and I think that comes from practice. And then what was really interesting to me, well, not really interesting to me because I listed him as my X factor on InsideTheBirds.com, was Quez Watkins. Quez Watkins played 28 snaps, good for 34% of the offensive total, and Fulgham played 26, which was good for 31%. Quez Watkins, to me, when I see him activated over John Hightower, playing over J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who last week was active but didn't play, this week was inactive, and then you see him, they work him into the offense, you start to see, okay, they like the speed here. They want to add some more speed. They want to get some of these young pieces, that dynamic pieces around Jalen Hurts. And I thought, what can they do to kind of keep pace with the Cardinals, who have an explosive offense? You don't have a lot of explosive players that can stretch the field, that can do things in space. You have Jalen Rager, but if you're going to activate Watkins, I had a feeling they were going to use him, and they did. And he brings more to the offense than people realize, and he can do things on screens, on crossing routes. They haven't even tested him deep yet, but he can do that. He's developed throughout the season. They didn't overload him earlier in the year, but now that he's grasped the playbook and there's some familiarity there and they trust him, you're starting to see him get more work on offense.
Andrew, one more before I let you go. I always appreciate you taking the time to jump on again. Andrew DiCecco at DiCecco at DiCecco NFL on Twitter. Of course, contributor for InsideTheBirds.com, 97.3 ESPN.com Eagles writer. His appearance powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Before I let you go, I think one of the biggest plays of the game yesterday that kept the Eagles in the game that is not going to get overlooked a lot is that play by Goddard and Clemens on that kickoff return was incredible. I mean, I didn't even know those guys were even on the special teams until I saw them go out there and make that play.
Yeah, man. And we talk about special teams. That's something that, that was the goat of the game because they allowed that, of course, that punter to make that nice pass. And they had, and Rick Lovato unfortunately had a bad snap that Zach Ertz couldn't
Horrible
handle.
snap. Horrible.
Yeah. And it wasn't, initially everyone thought it was Zach Ertz, but it was just a poor snap. And when you have a new holder like that, you're not, how do you plan for that? That can't happen. But going to your point, as far as coverage, I think that the coverage, I did not know that Goddard was on the coverage team. That was a shocker to me. And I think that really speaks to the lack of bodies that were available there. Usually you get guys like Marcus Epps and Kayvon Wallace that are like the core guys. Marcus Epps played all 68 snaps on defense. So, and TJ Edwards is a starter. He's also been a core member. So you have a lot of guys doing double duty like that. But yeah, and you mentioned Corey Clement. He's a core guy on Dave Phipps' unit. So that they're going to, the third phase matters, man. And the Eagles saw that when their third phase wasn't playing up to standard. That was a contributing factor to them losing that game.
Andrew DiCecco, catch him on InsideTheBirds.com, 97.3 ESPN.com. His appearance powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. All guests he appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. And, of course, Andrew, you'll be doing double duty because we'll be back on the Sports Bash this Wednesday at 2:30. So I appreciate you jumping on game night.
Oh, my pleasure, Josh. Take care.